are now watching Sitting with Dino.
Hey, come to talk to you, I'm Dino, and today I'm starting a new series called Sitting Down with Dino. Fairly straightforward. I have a bit of a different background. I'm wearing an Ivory Coast jersey to kind of fit in. Yeah, so this is kind of awkward considering I've never done a kind of a sit down video like this before. But today's video is going to be the good and the bad things about being a YouTuber. So what I'm just going to do is just go from good to bad, my perspective, what I like, what I don't like about it, and this might just reveal certain things to other people who might be thinking about starting, who might be in a similar place to me. So let's just get into it. Number one, in regards to the good things, is that I get to be my own boss. Like most people, I've worked for others, but what I like about YouTube is that I'm essentially responsible for myself in the sense of if I don't make videos, I'm not going to grow, and if I don't make good content, I'm not going to grow. I like that. I like being responsible for myself and myself only. Now, I have been in charge of other people throughout the various jobs that I've had, but it's completely different in the sense that I like getting out of it what I put into it, and I'd like to think that starting the show on YouTube, because I'm growing a good bit in the last couple of days, so I'm hoping that that continues, and I'm really hoping that by the end of this year I can get my 1,000 subs and I can become monetized. That is my ultimate goal. Yeah, this is probably the best thing I like. So when you are a YouTuber, kind of like what I said, you get out of it what you put into it. If you like doing things on your own time, then you're going to like being a YouTuber. What I mean by that is I get to set when I work and when I want to work, which is good in a sense because it means that I'm not on a strict schedule where I have to work 9 to 5 or whatever. But the other side is you probably end up working more than a general 9 to 5 job. For the likes of me, I actually prefer it because I feel like I'm getting a lot more out of it because I'm learning new things as I'm doing it. So there's that. This is probably the biggest one, say the biggest draw to being a YouTuber, at least for me, is that I've learned more in the last four odd months of doing YouTube than I've learned between university and actually working. What I mean by that is I don't necessarily mean in terms of learning how to interact. Well, actually technically that could be. What I mean in that is I've learned practical, applicable skills, as in transferable skills. I've learned how to edit, something that I had absolutely no background in. I learned how to do Photoshop and all that graphic design type of thing. Now, I'm not the best at either of them, but the point is that for me, it's a big deal because I started off with no background in it, and I'd like to think I'm getting fairly decent at it. So that's the thing. I like the fact that I've learned skills that, regardless of whether I decide that YouTube is going to be the next career job, like my career for the rest of my life, which I'm not going to pretend that it's stable enough to do that. I would like to think the next few years it might stay like this, but I can always do editing, basic editing. I can always do basic Photoshops. They're skills that I can still make money from, which I think is important because I think people kind of lose sight in terms of they want to get big on YouTube, they want to get money from that, but what they fail to realize is that if you learn how to make good content, you'll always have a source of income, which I think is a very big draw that people fail to mention. Yes, obviously when you get big you can outsource that to editor, you can have people do that, but if you still know the basics, that doesn't stop you from earning and going off and doing freelance work, so that's a good thing. Number 4, I'm not a very creative person. I'm very black and white, but I have become a very creative person. Now, what do I mean by creative? The majority of the time, I used to just do shit without thinking, as in I'd go out with friends and I wouldn't think about, you know, what I could do in order to make content. Now, every time I do something, I associate that with, can I make content out of it, and what content can I make out of it? So I'll give you an example. Of my stuff is gaming related, yes, okay. I have a few ideas that I'm working on, yes. So I have a best friend. There are a number of video ideas that I have with him that I want to do with him that I have to ask him. Hi, by the way, do you want to do videos with me for this? But my point is that I have an idea. I'm spoiling this now, I'm going to give it away. So we have an amusement park. I want to bring him to the amusement park and we play different games against each other, and whoever loses a particular game has to do some sort of punishment. I think it's good content. My point is that, you know, before I never would have associated going somewhere with making good content, or, you know, good content being fun, or being able to make content out of something that's fun. Whereas now, everything I do, I'm thinking, what can I get back out of it? Which might sound horrible to some people, but the way I am now, everything I do, I'm thinking of it as in an investment, so I'm getting something back out of it for whatever I put into it. Another example could be this phone. I got a new phone. I needed a new phone because I was going around with a completely cracked screen for 2 years. Nobody in the city would replace it because of the brand. So I finally made the splurge. I bought a new phone, but I made sure that I got one with a good camera because I knew that I could make videos with it. For that, yes, okay, I spent a decent amount of money, but again, it's an investment, which is what I do now. Any kind of money that I spend at this point is an investment. Any money I spend, the majority of it goes towards YouTube or my setup, or traveling in order to be able to upload content or any of that kind of stuff, or traveling to make content. So yeah, that's in that sense, and again, all that goes back into making content and making good content and getting a return from it. So yeah, everything I look at now is basically what can go on my channel and what can I make out of it, which is a good and a bad thing, but I think of it as a good thing. One of the things that you would kind of think would happen is that when you start to do YouTube and you start to make content, that you would automatically fall into a group of particular people who do the same thing as you, because you'd meet them through whatever. And it's not as easy as you think. So in the beginning, I started doing my own thing, playing games. I had a group, didn't really work out, just the hours stuff. But through that group, just kind of by randomness really, I met DM, my YouTube buddy. Yeah, so he's basically the main guy that I talk to about like YouTube stuff, because I don't really have anyone else. But the fact that I've met people is an incredible experience, like considering I've been in this little office room for the past 2 years with lockdown. So I mean, I haven't been able to meet people. Yeah, it's an incredible experience, because again, I wouldn't have met DM if it wasn't for gaming and YouTube in particular. So I like that. But I mean, realistically, there's good and bad in everything. So I also have to say that along with meeting people, one of the best things to it and one of the best advantages is that you have someone who kind of understands your journey. I have a number of friends who have their own thing, and yeah, they're supportive, fantastic, but they don't necessarily understand the work that goes into it. Like, they haven't sat down and recorded for hours, edited that video for hours, make the thumbnail, the SEO work, the descriptions, thumbnails, end cards, all that kind of stuff. And even listening to that, it's probably waffle to you unless you've done it. So that is one thing, essentially, is finding others that are in a particular situation and can sympathize with what you're doing. We had the 100 sub race. I will do a video on that, because I think it's good content, a good thing, and he will publish his forfeit soon. I think he said that would be his next video. Yeah, it's good in that sense, because again, it's all challenging. I think it would have been a tougher journey if I didn't have someone to talk to about, utilizing videos, all that kind of stuff, talking, giving hints, tips, getting them, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's interesting in that sense. I would recommend, if we're going to start, look for someone who actually understands the journey with you and that you can do it together, because at the minute, like, we're aiming for 1,000, and that's kind of, our simultaneous goal, us working together to kind of gain that goal. And we might not necessarily collab, but it doesn't mean that we're not having fun with it and competing and, helping each other do that. It's up to him below. Uncharts. So to say that everything about being a YouTuber is good, especially when you're new to it. Like, I'm still new to it. I mean, I'm like, what, 4.5 months into this, and I still consider myself new. But that doesn't mean that I don't have good information for everybody, because don't make my mistake. Number one with the bad things about being a YouTuber is you are responsible, solely responsible for making content. Again, this kind of ties back in with the good point about you can be your own boss. The problem is, if you don't make content, you're not going to grow. You're not going to learn how to deal with YouTube itself, and it's not going to be a very fun experience. Like, I've suffered with motivation issues and burnout, but I still love the idea of, having the patience to sit down. Now, my ADD goes everywhere, so it's not the easiest thing to do, and sometimes I will procrastinate, but it's still fun to do, like coming up with concepts and sitting down like this and doing them. So I think that's one thing that people will kind of forget. Certain people have their own upload schedules and what they do and how much videos to put out, but you still need to do that. And I think being strict enough in yourself that you're making sure that you're getting content out. It doesn't have to be good content. Like, I know for a fact that I put out content that wasn't my best, but in order for me to grow, I felt that it was a good thing. And I'll get into that again. I have a video on, daily uploading for 4 months. So if you want to see that, let me know. Point number 2, again, ties back into the good point. There is, if you're like me and you don't come from any sort of technological background, as in, what would I say? I'd say that would probably be the way to put it. Basically, I did not do anything technologically related in uni, didn't get taught anything in school. I knew bits and pieces about computers just because I had friends that were interested in that kind of stuff, and I like to learn how to do certain things. But for me, this was a massive learning curve. As in, I could sit down now and do a basic edit in about an hour, which might seem like a long time to people. That's actually pretty good, but I never knew how to edit. I didn't know anything about editing, and learning it was one of the most time-consuming things that I've ever had to do, because if you don't edit something properly, you will know. That is, if you don't put time into it, you are not going to get a good edit. And there's a reason that people tend to pay editors, because if you do a good edit, it's going to do absolutely phenomenal things for you, because again, you can edit for people. If you decide you don't like YouTube, you can make incredible edits that other people want to watch. You can do tutorials. There's so many different things you can do, but if you don't know how to do it, it's going to be a very tough time and very expensive for you, because you will have to pay an editor. So if I was somebody starting off, I would say invest in yourself and invest in time and learn how to do things, learn how to do the basics and learn how to do them very well. And then when you get to a point where you can start paying people to do it, that's fine, but invest in yourself initially and see how you get on. And that goes with Photoshop, that goes with everything that can make your experience on YouTube better and make you as a creator better. Yeah, okay. So third bad point is when you're watching PewDiePie, Mr. Beast, whoever you want to watch or whoever you watch on. You're sitting down and you're watching a 20-minute clip, couple of hour clips at the most, and you're thinking, yeah, that's great, that's perfect. All they do is record for a couple of hours and maybe half an hour doing whatever behind the scenes to make it good content. And that is the biggest misconception that you could ever have as a YouTuber, because you don't, if you're not doing this and you don't know what goes on and you don't know all the work that goes into creating a single video, it's very misleading. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just saying that you need to be prepared to put in 5 hours-ish at least per video, and that might seem very steep, but I'm talking about creating good solid content. And when I say 5+ hours, I'm talking about a couple of hours for the edit. Yeah, it takes that long for a 20-minute clip. So you have the editing, you have the thumbnail, you have the description, the tags, researching, all that stuff. You have to do the end cards, everything that goes in behind the scenes. It takes hours. So I think it's personally misleading in that sense, because again, I would have assumed that it would have been maybe 2-3 hours of work for an hour plus video, not being worse. So just for that, a lot of people assume that it's a lot less work than it actually is, but you need to again be prepared to put in multiple hours of work. And this is starting off, so this is giving yourself the benefit of, 3 maybe even hours to edit something when you're not necessarily that good with it at the beginning. And then obviously as you get better and as you make better content, it'll be quicker, you'll know how to do things quicker, you'll have shortcuts, all that kind of stuff, and that number will go down to 1 or 2 depending on the kind of content you want. So I think that's one of the bad things, because again, I feel like that's probably why a lot of people, when they begin this kind of thing, they don't necessarily carry it on, because it's a lot of work. And again, if you have a full-time job or if you're relying on the income that you have for doing this, it's probably not a good decision to be throwing that much time into something that you're not immediately going to get a monetary reward for. But if you have a break, if you're doing uni, if you're in school, if you're like me and everything is locked down, like this was the perfect time for me to start doing this, because again, I could put all my time into this, I could invest in the gear, I had the opportunity to do this. But again, yeah, hours and hours of work, and it mightn't seem like it, but I guarantee, try it if you haven't done it before and you'll see what I mean. All I say is thank God for tutorials, or else I would have been screwed. I think one of the biggest things is when you're starting out, obviously subscribers and all that is a big deal. Never make the mistake of comparing yourself to others, because if you see someone and in a month they're monetized, there can be a number of reasons why that's happened. It could be their content is in a very niche area. Obviously they're going to get a lot more people because their area isn't as saturated with similar content. That's not to say that they're not deserving of it, that's not what I mean. What I mean is that comparing yourself to others can be one of the biggest mistakes you can make when you're actually starting off, because again, you're looking at someone else's growth and you find that you might think that your work is better than theirs, but they're doing better. It can make you feel inferior in a sense, which means that you might decide that, well, I'm not getting out of what I want back from it, so I'm going to quit. And I guarantee that you should not do that. Just because you don't see yourself growing doesn't mean that you're not going to suddenly do really well. Again, I can only use my example of myself from this, because in order for me to reach 300 subs, it took about 3.5 months. So in 3.5 months, I was doing daily uploads, multiple videos that I thought were, the majority of them, yeah, I would have said they were good. And, it would have been a good, chunk of my time. It would have been all of my time, basically. And, it gets demoralizing when you don't see your subscriber count or your viewer count going up. And then when I came out with the subscriber rate, the sub challenge, I wanted to challenge myself and see what I could do. And, I started putting more work into my edits and making sure that everything was done better. And and I saw results for it. So instead of complaining in the beginning about why I wasn't growing for all the work I was putting into it, I looked at my content and I said, well, you know what, if I improve it and if I genuinely do my best, then why wouldn't I grow? I just think people need to give themselves a bit of a chance, because you can't expect to just all of a sudden go from a nobody in a sense to monetize. Like it doesn't work like that. Now, I mean, I'm growing fairly fast at my pace. Like my pace, I'm growing fast for me, but I still don't think that I'll reach 1,000 until hopefully the end of the year. Now that's my target. That's giving me till the end of December. It's very possible I might reach that a lot sooner, but I'm not putting the stress on myself. So what I'm doing now is I'm just focusing on making good content like these, because I think this series is going to be very interesting for people to hear it from someone in a similar position. By similar position, I mean someone that's still relatively new but has a couple of months experience doing this. So my last point kind of goes back to what I referenced in the last point, and that is the whole money aspect. What I mean by money aspect is if you have a full-time job and you're responsible for other people, yet you've always loved the idea of becoming a content creator, a YouTuber, an editor, any of that kind of stuff, probably not wise for you to quit everything and put all your time into YouTube. Now, there's nothing wrong with trying, you know, if you work 9 to 5 on the weekdays, putting 5 hours in on the weekend for a video a week, fair play to you, do it. I don't know how possible that is, but it's really hard to grow, especially when you're like me and my buddy who are just kind of starting out now. I will say he has a better background than me, because at least he knows how to do some sort of, you know, coding and that kind of stuff. But yeah, just be very, very careful if you want to do this. And like I said, I'd wait for a time where you know that you're going to have the hours put into it. So, you know, if you're a teacher and you have 3 months off for summer, do it that summer. But again, I'd also say don't wait either, because I waited. This is my 3rd time trying this. I didn't have the patience the last 2 times, but now I have, and I'm actually enjoying it. I do wonder what would have happened if I continued the last couple of times that I did this, so just keep that in mind. But that's pretty much it. That's what I personally think are the best and the worst things about being a YouTuber / content creator, whatever you'd like to call yourself. So let me know if you're in a similar position to myself, what are your best and worst things, and if there's any questions, let me know down below as well, and I'll answer them and I'll get back to you. If there's a good amount of them, I might do a response video to this, but I'm going to leave it there. So we'll see you for now. What was that? Cheers.